Yeah.
Oh gosh, it took the hours to set up 100
Yeah, the pipe and drape takes a long time.
So annoying.
We used to have a big canvas that was here, and then canvas on the tables, and it was a whole thing. And then we stopped.
Canvas for a while.
We did it for a while, and then we got tired. Putting it up. I got tired of putting it up.
Like standing up on the benches every time they cut it down.
You're damaging something.
It was similar practical too, because for a while we stopped cleaning that one up. We were still on the table.
Yeah.
With coffee on it.
Yeah. They usually Tuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tuck would spill coffee on it, and then we wouldn't clean it, and then.
And it started like falling apart at like the edges, like you could pull strings out of it. It never covered the full table. It would cover like from here to there, and then the edge of the side was
It was never perfect, yeah. It's quite bothersome.
The naked side.
Yeah. Once I put them back there, put them
Oh yeah, so I got off Wednesday because it was the asynchronous day because the C, I got some team out. So probably into that, but that's just so the seniors were supposed to do their ACT on Wednesday, but they didn't end up doing it. But they had already planned for everybody to be in school except for seniors, so they just skipped school that day. So we were out last Wednesday, and then we had fall break this week. And then the week before last week, we got out Friday because of the storm. So Washington County's been out for 2 straight weeks, and they might be out next week too, or after fall break, just because it's affected so much down there. It's mainly around Crockett. Is the reason that they're out of school, because Crockett's just like done. We've had, I can't remember. Apparently, there was a statistic that came out that this is the second hurricane besides Katrina.
Yeah.
Even though down here we got a lot of rain and stuff, it was still like we've had hurricanes in the past that have hit down in Florida, but they've barely hit us. So this one's basically everybody did, except for down near like.
Yeah, all the cars that are in the pictures are from 4 miles up the road.
Yeah, that's been wild.
4 miles.
Oh, the fly.
Okay, you got shot.
Oh, you're too slow, Joe.
I'm gonna be honest, you guys pointed
I
at
got
me.
you.
You said mosquito and I didn't really see it. I put my hand up.
Your fault.
It's like collapsed on itself.
It's at least 500 feet from the foundation. It got stuck in a tree. Stuck by like 3 or 4 trees.
Tri-Cities now, and on all their pages, like Facebook, so the main highways to Asheville from our area won't be like back up and running until probably 2025, maybe.
Probably longer than that. They're gone.
Yeah. Yeah, they said like maybe 2026.
The last picture that you'll stop on is a teacup. I found a teacup in the middle of the field. Lord knows where, untouched, unscathed. No
It
problem.
was like half of the road. Like it's not like it was underwater. It wasn't. It's like it got chopped in half.
Yeah. I have a
Yeah.
friend who makes homemade
And all the
soaps,
bridges,
she likes to
too,
use old
like-
teacups like that to put dish soap in. So I asked her, I was like, yeah, I'll just give this to you, whatever. But I have a friend who does this, and she started jumping up and down. She's like, yes, please. It was really cute. I used to. Did you see the lawnmower? How buried the lawnmower was?
Yeah.
The whole thing was under silky dirt. It's nuts. I picked up a Husqvarna leaf blower. It had to have
Worst part
been
is though,
60, 70 pounds.
even though it's
So
bad, that obviously Garden State, it's so
Wet.
bad. Literally every other school system around us has been out for like weeks, and we're still going to school. So.
And not even just that. Because it feels bad here, and everybody's only talking about North Carolina.
Yesterday,
And I'm like,
Avery High School is still
it's,
missing one.
I think even worse there, but it's like bad enough.
7 kids.
Except for
My
that
mom's
that
so
part's
mad
really serious.
because she lives in Washington
Yeah.
State.
In terms of
I'm
going
only
to
hearing
school.
about Georgia, North Carolina, and Florida.
Yeah, because it's also
I
I think the reason that they're making us still go is because families are needing stuff from the school because they basically don't have anything now. So that's why we're going. Otherwise, they would just let us go because there's a lot of people affected by it right now. So.
All right, everybody. Welcome. We'll go ahead and get started. This is how we're going to start today. I'm just playing some music for us to help us enter into the space. And I'm going to read, we've read it 1,000 times, but it's that rendition of Psalm 23 that I think is just beautiful. Because it's one of those things that's so stitched on pillows for us that we just miss it. So this rendition of it has recaptured it for me. So anyways, I've read it 1,000 times to you guys, but I'm going to reread it again. So as usual, use the space however you need to. Enter in however you need to. If you need to pray, feel free to pray. If you want to listen to as I read this, that's totally fine too. If you just need to check out for 30 seconds, feel free to do that as well. So enter into the space however you need to. We'll just sit in the quiet, listen to the song for a second, and then I'll read this over us and pray, and then we'll name the good. The ground of our being and the giver of our existence is my caretaker and guide. So I already have everything I need at the deepest level. This giver makes me lie down in lush places and leads me beside peaceful waters and restores my soul. I find that God, the source of all that is true and good and beautiful, takes an interest in me, guiding me along a path of truth and goodness and beauty for the sake of love. Even though I walk through a valley where death and loss haunt me, where the threats are existential, I'm learning to trust that which is greater than evil, because evil is a limited resource and God never runs out of love. For God is with me and for me, gently nudging me toward my identity and purpose, fiercely fending off that which would destroy my soul. The giver is so generous that I find myself feasting on good things, even when the threat of evil or suffering is close at hand, but still an abundance overtakes me. While suffering may be close at hand, pursuing me, pursuing us, such evil is outpaced by the goodness and mercy that chase us in every moment. And our eternal home is with and in God right here and right now, which is the place of greatest belonging we will ever know. There's many things there that stand out to me. Evil being a limited resource, God never running out of love, and that evil is outpaced by goodness and mercy. That's really good. I want to pray for us, and then we'll name the good together. God, we're here, and we're yours. We come just as we are with what we have. We don't come as we should be, because none of us is as we should be. We pray that we realize fully and deeply that just showing up is enough. So as we are with what we have, we're here. God, as we just read, that evil is a limited resource, that you never run out of love, that evil is outpaced. God, I'm wanting to believe that, even though I'm struggling sometimes. So as we read that, as we just read that, God, I pray that you help our unbelief, help us to lean in, believing that you are our caretaker and our guide, even though suffering is close at hand. So again, Jesus, we're here, we're yours, and we want to lean in and learn. We praise, thanks your name. Amen. All right, everybody. We can name the good together, that which you've seen, you've tasted, you've experienced, that is true and good and beautiful and real. We can name that. That also being said, the last 2 weeks have been rough with our community and everything. So I'm not trying to move on by saying, let's just name the good together. So trying to be sensitive to that, because something I would like to name the good in is it has been beautiful to see how many people have surrounded our friends and our family in Irwin and Asheville. And it's truly mind blowing, like what's happening in some really cool ways. It's like that is a good to share in the midst of such evil and suffering being at hand, So again, I'm not trying to say, let's just move on and pretend like everything's hunky dory, but I still think goodness, truth, and beauty still show up, and we're just here to name it and spot it when we see it. So there's my opening.
Mm-hmm.
All yours.
I worked at a family's house who lost literally everything. Like, their house is literally gone. Their neighbor's house is gone. His mom's house is gone. Like, there's an entire property of 5 or 6 houses that just don't exist anymore. It's flat land. And none of them had flood insurance, so nothing. They get no help. And I didn't see one person who was mad or upset. They all had smiles on their faces, and they were just happy to be okay. It was really cool to see. And it blew my mind.
Yeah.
So, that was crazy.
Oh yeah.
I was in tears and they were laughing.
Sure.
It was nuts.
Yeah.
That was cool.
What else?
It's been cool in areas that are really hard to get to with the delay in help, watching communities completely show up for each other in every possible way.
Yeah.
And it's strangely encouraging. Or not strangely encouraging, but it's encouraging to see people all show up for each other.
Our basement's dry.
Nice. That's a win. Last time it was up in humidity, wasn't it?
Awful. Yeah.
How'd you guys manage that? Do you get someone to come in and?
We just got everything out. We were able to shop bucket and then had 2 dehumidifiers and 5 fans going all week. So it's down in the 40s now.
Yeah,
So
we just
more
had to
manageable.
vacuum the whole thing by hand, but it worked really well.
Yeah. Once we got power, it was good.
Yeah, we had some of these truck hood plugins, thankfully, because we were without power till Sunday.
I was sad because I finally got my garage, which is where my gym is, all cleaned up and ready to use again because my back's feeling better. And now it's just full of everything in the basement. I'm like, well, okay, I'll just wait a little while longer to work out.
Just a little bit.
It's fine.
We went over to Leah's for an hour the other night, just to stand there and wait for deliveries and stuff. It was so cool to just walk into her garage and just see mountains of stuff that they're collecting to donate to people. I just like felt really proud to know her and be her friend because she's just been doing all of the things for the community.
Yeah.
And like far away places too, not even just like here or in Unicoi, but also in North Carolina. So it was just really cool to like walk in there and see that and just like be really proud of her. Proud to know her. So.
That's good.
Yeah, it's been really cool. My husband and I both work for like nonprofits, and to just kind of see how they have been reaching out. John's work just like sent him into Greenville with like care packages for families and things. And so he was just driving around these back roads. He went all the way out to Lake Nancy and just got to see some families and take them like diapers and formula and food. And it was like completely heartbreaking. But the fact that like his job was like, this is what we're gonna pivot to. Like they're not even like continuing their normal work. They're just pivoting to do that. So that's been really cool. And like our YMCA in Kingsport has opened to like let people shower and like get water and food and stuff and really cool as well. We've been like collecting supplies to go to Unicoi and stuff. So it's just cool working for organizations like that that are willing to serve and help in these kinds of times.
Yeah. Anything else? All right. We're not trying to move on from everything because how do you move on? You know, as life is just shifting as goes forward. Things are just going to be different going forward. How everything is, and so, but each day you just kind of put a new foot in front and keep going. And it is weird how we plan to do this kind of new series of conversations on the art and practice of listening. I mentioned it in the group me this morning, but it's like this is the season of like listening in and leaning into our community, and it's beautiful how people have done that. And so it's we're going to continue that conversation as time goes forward. So listening to our community, listening to ourselves, listening to each other. That's the next 5 weeks or something like that, however long it takes us. But today I'm just trying to open up the door on listening. So there's that. If you want to check along here a second, and we'll be looking at Deuteronomy chapter 6. So if you want to check it out, we'll be looking at one line in just a second. But we're talking about listening for the next handful of weeks. And I don't think it's swinging too far to say it's a pathway of healing the world, is being people that can listen well. To quote, you guys probably know Paul Tillich. He's a German Christian philosopher. He said this. He said, the first duty of love is to listen. And you guys know this movie. There's actually a second movie, or third. Can't remember. Quiet Place. Did they just come out with a new one? Yeah. You guys know Quiet Place. John Krasinski. Ever seen it? I'm about to spoil it for everybody if you haven't seen it. It's a good movie. So here's my plot synopsis for you guys. It is. We can just watch it next week.
Movie about being quiet. There's another one.
Probably is there's a lot of horror movies about being quiet. So.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, A Quiet Place, 2018, John Krasinski. It's a horror thriller where blind alien creatures, highly sensitive hearing, have wiped out much of humanity. Story follows John Krasinski's family. who must live in near total silence to avoid being detected by the creatures. They've adapted to the silent existence by using sign language, soundproofing their home, taking extreme measures, all that. The film is exploring, obviously, survival, family bond, sacrifice, with listening becoming a literal life or death skill. The inability to communicate verbally heightens the emotional intensity, and the character's reliance on nonverbal listening creates a powerful narrative. Their struggle shows how closely listening is tied to safety, trust, and the instinct to protect those we love. If you've not seen it, or if you want to go back and watch it again, it's very eerie how little they talk.
And then there's no music, I think.
There's no music, so it's literally silent. I mean, like you hear the stuff in the movie, but it's like, but they're listening to each other, you know. I share that because that's what we're talking about, is the idea of listening. But there's also this this guy's a renowned evolutionary psychologist named Robin Dunbar. I read some of their research recently. It really stood out to me. He was talking about how listening was essential for survival early on. So early hominids, we progressed in our life. They relied on sound to detect threats and communicate with groups. So like listening is more instinctual than sight. So he basically theorized that language and listening, it was such a social tool to strengthen cohesion and cooperation. What's curious now is like we're not necessarily under survival all the time. Like there's not a tiger jumping out about to eat us. So it's like, are we slowly losing our ability to listen in some regard? Besides the social cohesion part of listening, like are we losing some of that survival? Anyways, I don't think it's that far to say that listening is a pathway to heal the world, like I said at the beginning. In a current world where everything's kind of mortified by strict in and out, right versus left, who's right, who's wrong, all that stuff. Like what if we gave ourselves to being people who could listen really well? We're in a political season, election season. There's lots of churches who are pitching who you should vote for right now. So like what if a church instead took that route, and a church instead took the route of like, let's just be people who can listen deeply and thoughtfully. So my only goal today is to just introduce you to the World Wide Web of listening, show you how deep it is in our spiritual tradition, then ask some questions, and then we're done. Okay. To begin, you guys know Thomas Merton. Read him every Sunday. Thomas Merton expressed the idea of seeing Christ in everyone. Like if you could boil down what Thomas Merton was really talking about, is seeing Christ in everybody. One of his famous reflections, it's Merton's famous reflection if you Google it, is in March 18th of 1958. He's in downtown Louisville, Kentucky. And he writes this in his journal. He says, in Louisville, at the corner of 4th and Walnut in the center of the shopping district, I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all these people. It's in his autobiography. He sees all these people. I loved all these people. They were mine and I was theirs. They could not be alien to one another, even though we were totally strangers. And he says, there is no way of telling these people that they're all walking around shining like the sun. So what he's saying is that each person is carrying some kind of an image of God, this divine spark in them. So for Merton, that was his moment of awakening to the presence of God that's in everybody. So if that's the case, theoretically, we could just stop there and start a pathway of listening to people. Like what would happen if we like believed a little bit, leaned in a little bit more deeply, that as you encounter another, you're not just encountering another person, you're encountering an image of God, a piece of God right in front of you. If that's not convincing, here's some more stuff. 85% of what we know is learned through listening. Big surprise. And this is cool. I don't know how they got this research, but only 2% of professionals in the world have done any kind of formal education on how to listen effectively. Only 2% in companies and corporations. Poor listening, as you guys know, is one of the top complaints in relationships. Research showing that couples who don't actively listen to each other are 4 times more likely to experience relationship breakdowns. Believe it or not, employees who are listened to feel more valued in their jobs. Believe it or not. Research done by the National Communication Association found that 70% of people, this is funny, admit, I think that's the key word, admit to engaging in pseudo listening, where they appear to listen but are actually thinking about something else or distracted by devices. So 70% of people admitted it. The other 30 were lying about it probably. They say that the average person only listens for 17 seconds before interrupting. Just clock it sometime with someone. Give them 17 seconds. See if they interrupt.
I know somebody that was more like 6.5.
Oh yeah, that's probably maybe that's giving too much time for people.
I do that because I forget what they said first. So if I want to respond, I have to do
Cut it off. It's like, hang on a second, let me respond
They're
first.
goldfish, that's all.
I forgot what you just said 30 seconds ago, so let me. All right, here's the point. Listening is more than hearing words. To quote Tillich again, it's an act of love. It's an act of understanding, act of transformation. It's the act of affirming the most basic Christian doctrine that the image of God is in everybody. It's the Merton experience. I'm seeing the image of God in this person, seeing Christ in this person. We all know people who think they listen well, but we all know that they're not good listeners. We can all nudge the people in the room if they're here. But fortunately, the art of listening, I gave some research and some stats and some job stuff. It's not just a new thing. Like the art of listening and all this stuff, like it is like a self-help thing. Like if you go to couples therapy, like they're going to give you how to listen better. But it's not just there. It actually is deep in our Christian tradition. So you just want to nerd out with me for 5 minutes. Let's just nerd out. Look at Deuteronomy chapter 6 if you're there, if you want to look at it. Verse 4, that's all we're going to read. I'm going to read you some other scriptures, but I just wanted you to see this one. You guys know this. This is pivotal in Jewish culture and Jewish history. Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. It's a prayer. It's something they recite very often. That first word here, you guys probably know it, is the word Shema. It occurs about 1,200 times in the Hebrew Bible. Okay, various contexts, but it's all about listening in. The book of Proverbs uses the same word, Shema. Proverbs 19 says, listen to advice and accept instruction that you may gain wisdom in the future. Proverbs 18, to answer before shema'ing, before listening, that's folly and shame. And James 1:19, everybody knows this one. Let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to become angry. Something we talk about very often, though, is that our main crux, the focal point for us is Jesus of Nazareth. He's our vision of God. So what did Jesus talk about? In the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, what we have recorded, which is obviously a small snapshot, what we have recorded is Jesus asking others 183 questions and being asked 307 questions. So if anything, without looking at what's actually going on, if anything, that should tell us that Jesus was really into this thoughtful back and forth. He was into the asking questions. He was into the building. But to go further, Matthew 11, Mark 4, Luke 8, Jesus says, let him who has ears to hear, let him hear. Mark 13, Jesus is quoting Isaiah, where he says, for these people's hearts have become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears. They've closed their eyes. He's pointing out the way that you can hear, but you're not going to actually listen. This is the one gift I want to give you. This is the main crux for me, is John 13. John, the Apostle John, is envisioned as leaning against the chest of Jesus at the supper. It's a very important story for the Celtic tradition, for Celtic Christianity. Because they say this is the moment that John listened to the heartbeat of God. It's a moment for them, and I'm reading this from John Philip Newell. He says it symbolizes a deep spiritual intimacy where John is not just physically close to Jesus, but is attuned to the rhythm of divine love and creation. By listening to the heartbeat of Jesus, John represents an awareness of the sacred presence of God in all of life. For the Celtic tradition, this act of listening reflects the call to be in harmony with God's presence in the world, in each other, to hear the pulse of God and creation, all that. So if you want to look it up, it's John Philip Newell. He talks a whole lot about that story. It's very pivotal for the Celtic tradition. But John is leaning against Jesus, and he hears the heartbeat of God. And so as we listen to another, that's what he's getting at, is we're listening to the heartbeat of God in someone else. And just to keep going, let's just nerd out some more. You guys know the rule of St. Benedict. It was written in 530. The first word of the rule is listen. It's urging the monks to listen to the heart of God, heart of their brothers, themselves. Talk about it. Mother Teresa is famous for saying, God speaks in the silence of the heart. Listening is the beginning of prayer. There's also a story I've heard about Mother Teresa. I don't know if it's true or not. But she was asked, I think I've shared this with you guys actually. When she was asked what she says when she prays, she responded by saying, oh, I just listen. To which the person responded, okay, what does God say? To which she replied, oh, he just listens. Mm-hmm. Which there's a whole lot there that we could probably dance with for a while. I thought that was beautiful. In Eastern Orthodoxy, it's a big tradition built on contemplative prayer. You guys know the Jesus prayer. They say, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. It's this phrase that they repeat over and over again, but the idea is that it brings us into a silent stillness to listen. Back to Thomas Merton, he said, it's deep solitude and silence that I find, it is in deep solitude and silence that I find the gentleness with which I can truly love my brother and sister. There's a silence that I'm giving myself to which there's no end. That's the only way to actually love my brother and sister. I can keep going. There's a practice of Lectio Divina, which I think you're starting. Is it tonight? There you go. Abby's starting tonight. It's literally listening. That's the whole idea of the practice of Lectio Divina. Slow, contemplative reading of scripture, emphasis on listening for God's voice through the text, all that. So this is it, and then I'm done. Today, if you just generally look at our culture, people are we just don't feel listened to. We're increasingly politically and theologically polarized because conversation can't happen. And the result is just stagnation, which literally means a state of not flowing. There's literally no flow. There's no building. That's where the word dialogue comes from. It's building back and forth, back and forth. In our culture, we have overemphasized talking and underemphasized listening, which is showing how full of ourselves we are, because I have so much to say and you don't, someone cut you off. Specifically in the church, we've overemphasized our thoughts, theology, stuff I need to say, and underemphasized the conversation, showing how too sure of ourselves we are. We're very quick to posit this is what's true and what's not true. So just the question is, what if we gave ourselves to really and truly becoming people who listen deeply? What if we sought to restore the dignity and image of God in everybody in such a way that it made us deeply and truly and thoughtfully listen to every single person that you encounter? Not always thinking of what to say next, not trying to win an argument or new conversation or come up with new facts to whatever. But what if just listening was the goal? Like that was the win, is I'm engaging in this person thoughtfully. There's one French philosopher, they said this: attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. So if today we're just generous people, if we gave ourselves to being generous people and gave those around us, the world around us, gave yourself attention, thoughtful listening. So here's 3 step practice for us this week. 1, when someone's speaking, make the point to remind yourself however you can that listening is the goal. Like that's my goal here, is just listening. Listening to this person in front of me is the most important thing that I can do. You're looking at them in the eye, you're putting away your distractions, you're trying to be there fully present no matter what. 2, this is counterintuitive to everything I've been saying, but just bear with me, is ask a lot of questions. If you ask a lot of questions, you may come across annoying because that's the fear. But people are generally flattered to talk about themselves. Like people like to talk about themselves. It's like good listening is about learning. It's about discovery. It's about being genuinely interested to learn from another. It's an investigation, and investigation is the very opposite of closed-mindedness. That's what we've been talking about for 5 weeks. Is and our new one-liner, see if I remember it. Rediscovering faith with a hospitable head and heart. That's the idea of being hospitable. Is an investigation to an extent. It's like I'm asking questions. Like curiosity has a value. Curiosity has a virtue. And then 3, specifically leaning on everything I just said too, if you've had a consistent practice of worded prayer, like you're always voicing prayers, like deep in our Christian tradition is wordless prayer. Is like not saying anything. I mean, Taylor and I had this conversation yesterday, but deep in our Christian tradition is like the monastics calling God the great absence. I got it from Richard Holloway. He calls God the great absence. Like there's times in our lives where God feels more like a hole than something else, like a presence, So how do you respond to that? Sometimes like the best response is to sit in silence. And that is just as much prayer as it is you voicing things. And there's often seasons in my life where I'm better at writing stuff down than just like voicing a prayer. And even when I'm trying to write a prayer out, like I got nothing. I got literal no words, But it's like if I gave myself as a practice of 10 minutes to silence and dedicated myself to that as my prayer. That's deep in our family history, And to see what happens. Like what if you gave yourself to that way? So just in sum, good listening is not just about hearing. It's not about agreement, which is what we've been trying to get at too. It's not about changing someone's mind, winning, being the best, accomplishing our goals, which is going to be hard to practice because that's what our culture says is valuable. Not to belabor the point, but the point is that listening deeply is the goal. But, and this is what we'll talk about as we keep going, weeks go on, being heard, being listened to is enough to make someone feel welcomed. Once someone feels welcomed, then the guard goes down. Once the guard goes down, trust is built. Once trust is built, this opens up deeper and more conversations. And just once a conversation is started, and that's probably when we'll change. But we have to get there, you know. So can listening change the world? Let's just swing for the fences. I think it can. So over the next 5 weeks, we're going to break down all that further. Just want to introduce it for a little bit. So next week, we'll talk a little bit more about listening to each other and specific practices. We'll do that. But I have some questions for discussion now for the rest of today. So you guys have to participate. Sorry. And Louis up. Welcome. 20-minute nap. Look at him and his Henley. All right. So if you had to articulate the impact of listening or not listening in our world, how would you say that have you experienced it? You've seen it? How'd you articulate the impact of listening, the good that comes from it, or the harm of not listening? If you can articulate, give your own words to that, give an experience to that, what would you say?
A lot of relationship building definitely hangs on it. Because, like, I hung out with Leah Valley, like, the other weekend, and she's really good at listening. And there's, like, an immediate kind of safety there, even if you don't. It doesn't matter if we agreed on different things and we're pretty different people, but, like, there's an immediate trust there. On the contract, on the other end, somebody that I knew for years didn't listen well, and I just, like, have a tough time wanting anything to do with him.
Sure.
And that was after years of knowing him not super deeply, but like that broke down so much. And then for somebody that I hardly knew, it built so much to be listened to and to have somebody ask thoughtful questions.
Yeah. That's good.
Not to be dramatic, but it can be like life and death for some people.
Yeah.
Because I think not being heard over and over again is like a closed door to someone.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you want to take the analogy further, one of my favorite doctors that I work for, I've learned so much from her, and she's just in her 20s, and she always tells me to sit down with the patient and pull up a chair, and she'll say, listen. And it really makes your work, it's like a shortcut. It's almost like Sabbath. Like, if you don't take Sabbath and you're more productive on Sabbath, you really kill the rest of your week. It's the same thing with listening to people. Like, it's a shortcut to know what's really in their heart, and like maybe what's going on in their body and their mind, like everything. And so I just think sometimes it's counterintuitive. You just have to stop yourself and let the person talk. And for someone like me, sometimes I want to fill the space, but if you'll let another beat go by, people will talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it plays a big role in making people feel seen, for sure. Just like, not even necessarily like having dialogue, just sitting there and listening. Because I mean, I'm a person who internalizes a lot, and then when I'm ready to talk to someone about it, I'm really ready. And so if someone initiates that with me, even if I don't have to, like, that's just, it makes you feel like, oh, okay, so people do notice. And like, when you initiate and like, hey, like, talk to me, what's going on, like, maybe they don't want to, but when they do, like, that's just something, there's a lot of importance in that, I think, because you don't even have to really understand, like she said, agree with anything, just like hearing them be like, well, I feel this and this and this, and I just feel so unseen. But this makes me feel like she said, it opens doors, because sometimes people just feel so little and small. And even just being like, I want to listen to you and I care what you have to say, even if it's random crap that you think about, like, you know, just even if it has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah. Like,
you are not small or little. Like, you are a person, and I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
I feel like it's very important to, like, I don't know, the way, I'm trying to figure out how to express this, like someone's value. Like, you can help them feel more value because you were saying, like, I care about you enough to sit down and not do anything else and just listen.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I think that's the biggest impact for me is just probably even over the last couple of years, just the like sweetest thing that God showed me is that image of God concept, which I always had heard of, but it never was really emphasized. My sin was way more emphasized than my image of Godness. And so to be able to look now at people that in the past may have rushed to conclusions or not necessarily judgments on, but maybe sometimes judgments. And even as they were talking, you have to find yourself like you formulating your own responses and make sure you're tuning out. And next thing, it's more important about what I have to say back than it is what they're saying. You move past all that and you recognize that, like what Gabe was just saying, like everyone has value. You're not going to agree with everything that everybody has to say, but they still doesn't mean you can't learn something. Doesn't mean they have nothing to offer you. And so to be able to recognize that each person has the image of God in them, and even in the lowliest of people, I still have something that I can learn from, something that can help move me closer to understanding who God is from someone who may not even be following God.
Yeah.
I can still learn. And in the process of doing that, not that it's just like a selfish thing, but you show value and humility back to that person. That person now feels seen and heard and cared for in a way that, probably all going into situations where somebody just wants to talk, but that's often code for I've got something to vent and I've got to tell you that you're wrong. Or I've got, here's my 2 cents. And it's not really a conversation at all. It's the opposite of that. When you do listen, you do show value and care for someone, that it's not a debate. It's not about who's right and who's wrong, but it's an act of love, really.
Sounds good. What else? Would anybody else want to share a specific time that you felt listened to? And what were the elements that made you feel that way? I can say one real quick while you guys think some more, because it's very obvious in my mind. I've talked about it 1,000 times, but Chris Edgar, who I worked with before, the way he listened to you was like haunting. Like you're just like stare at your soul.
Yeah.
And
I wondered if he's not quite human.
yeah, it's like it's always a question mark with him. But it was always so haunting, like when he listened to you, because he was never anywhere else besides right there with you. And then whenever he would respond, he had the longest, most awkward pauses between like responding to you, because he was like actually thinking about what to say. And like it hurt sometimes because it was like, like, are you gonna say something? And but I never felt, I always felt present with him, So I think about him often, about how he listened and gave presence to people, and it didn't matter what was going on. He was there with you in that moment and listened very deeply. So
I think we do always kind of have a tendency to want to be Job's friends, the first 3 guys that come up to him. What you got to do is, it's like, and I think that is something I've had to learn over the years. Is there's some people that they just need you to listen to. They don't need a solution. People are going through marital problems or whatever. It's like they don't need you to have all the answers. They just need someone that'll listen to what they're saying.
that's right. Yeah. This is Brian, everybody.
Nice to meet you guys. Nice to be here.
Glad you're here, Brian. Yeah, it's like me and Taylor had this conversation maybe yesterday or something about the Bible's answers on why evil and suffering happen in the world. I think we've talked about it before. But like, you can break them down loosely, Proverbs and others. If evil and suffering happens to us, it's probably because you made a stupid decision. That's the answer, which is very helpful sometimes. And then there's other texts in the Hebrew Bible that lean a little bit more like in Ecclesiastes, like, it happens to everybody. We can't really know. The best thing you can do is give yourself to doing good.
Listen to anybody. We were just there to give them
presentation of the gospel, and that was it. We never really saw them. For me, you never saw them really ask the people that had real needs, And so I just think of that, like back to all those years of doing that, but truly wasn't listening. I'm just, like you said, it was just that certainty. Like I had the answer that I needed to give them so they could accept Jesus and then move on. But not like truly taking the posture of Jesus and like listening to them and seeing the needs that they really had,
Yeah.
So that just came to my mind.
That's good.
While you were talking all those years.
I tried to do that. Like, I didn't think that I needed to listen, but it was kind of like just with the posture of like, just let's get to where I could give you the answer.
Right.
Like there wasn't actually learning. Because if you don't think you can learn something from someone, you can pretend, but you're not going to learn from them.
Yeah.
I ultimately didn't think I had anything to learn from people who didn't have the truth, because all of their answers or all of their beliefs would be off because they weren't a Christian. And that just melted away a few years ago, finally.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's changed everything. I mean, it's like made some relationships with people that aren't believers like just completely change and blossom.
Some of it's just human nature too.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us are wired to be like fixers, and we'll listen to an extent, but we can try to get in there and like, well, I'm trying to fix your problem here, and then the other person, I want you to fix this, I want you to listen. And so we've both been on the side of that. It's not necessarily all like bad motive, but yeah, it's just being willing to, I think the assumptions that we carry around are very dangerous, to ourselves and to others. And he said, you accumulate as you go through life, you see things, experience things, you draw conclusions from those things, and those conclusions formulate your life, how you interact with yourself and others. Which is fine in a way, but just having that, if you draw conclusions that all of those things are accurate and right, then they become dangerous. And then again, God has nothing else to teach me. And so that having that posture of openness is really important, that, just like you drew conclusions from experience, years 0 through 25, keep drawing them from 26 to 36 and so on until you get as old as I am. And you still keep drawing them. So, it never really ends, but it's really hard for us to do. It's really hard because I think we're taught, like you said a billion times, we're taught to find the answers.
Yeah.
And even from a Christian perspective, you approach the Bible trying to find the answers to the question, the theological, the 4 views of this. You find the one, that's really right.
Yeah.
And then you go with it. And it's really hard to undo that.
Sure.
It's been wired into your thinking, and really it's wired into our whole culture, is trying to find the right, as opposed to being open and willing to wrestle with the openness.
That's right. That's good.
I think it's hard sometimes for me to acknowledge that even if you have the answer, that's not always going to be the most helpful thing at the time. Because it's whenever people I love come and talking about things that they're hurting with, I mean, just how I'm wired, kind of do saying, I'm like, well, I want to fix that right now because I love you and I can't stand to see you in a state of not happiness. And it's hard for me sometimes to just acknowledge they're going to be in pain, and that just might be how it's going to be. And it's hard to just keep telling myself, yes, you have the answer, but sometimes I just need to feel it. Or it's okay if you don't have the answer because they're just feeling it. And it's I just have to over and over again remind myself, because if not, I will go into that oh, well, give me your problem, give me all the steps, and I'll find a solution, and then you can be happy and I can be happy, and everyone will hold hands and sing kumbaya, and whatever. It's just so hard to you got to feel this, and the answer will show up. Maybe you already have the answer, but you've just got to it's hard to just keep remembering that, because especially I feel more men are geared to just oh, let me fix that for you, because whatever. But it's just, I don't know, hard to remember that sometimes.
Yeah.
Having a teenager has helped me a lot with that, because I've had to learn to say things because you can't fix everything first. So I've had to learn to say, do you want me to give you my solution or what I think would be right, or do you just want a hug? And she'll tell me. So it's like, sometimes I think it's okay to just be like, what do you need from me? And that's part of listening too, I think.
There's some.
Yeah. When there's yeah.
Yeah, that's something we'll talk about eventually. Is I forgot what it's called now, but it's from a book. It's called Super Communicators. It's a great book. But his whole thing was he had like a threefold way of engaging with someone, and one of them, I think, point 2 or something, was he called looping for understanding. It's like someone says something, it's like you repeat it back to them, and it's like make sure I got this right. But a sub point in that list was him saying like clarifying like what do you need from me, and it's like if this is what you need, then I can. But it's like there's nothing wrong with asking that question either. It's like what are you looking for, and how can I help
Because
with
sometimes
that?
when people are talking, they're just looking for someone to talk to, and that's it.
Yeah.
They're not looking for anything else.
Yep. Any other obstacles or distractions you want to name?
I would not say children are a distraction,
Well,
but like in a very practical sense, like the amount of times I with other moms at the park, we were like running around trying to chase our kids. Like, I'm just curious if any other parents have like thoughts on how do you do that? Like, how do you? Because like active listening to me is sitting there and like looking someone in the eyes and like really engaging. And I'm just curious, like, how do you do that while you're also chasing around your toddlers? I don't know. I think that's like when I think about on a day-to-day basis, like that feels like the biggest thing that keeps me from being able to like really intentionally listen to someone.
Yep.
I don't know. Does anyone have?
That's great. That's great.
Love an answer.
Let's give an answer.
No answers. And maybe that's okay. Like maybe that's okay, and that's just the season of life that we're in.
Not me. Like, 'cause when I was like actually intentionally listening, so I had the kids get me.
Yeah.
And so it's like, maybe I could get like this on. And it's kind of nothing for them to do. And even the mother kind of was just like, look, I'm in this chaos with you. My child's also insane. And, I'm also running after them. And like, even just that like solidarity, like, oh, I'm not the only one that can't sit down and listen right now. It's late, but yeah, it's hard to set aside times to like sit down without them. As someone who doesn't have little kids running around, and I have a lot of friends who do, in those conversations when they're chasing their kids, I don't feel like I'm any less listened to. So like, don't be hard on yourself for that, because even those conversations, even with distraction of kids, they're still meaningful.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was out with Taylor, she was a little apologetic at lunch, and I didn't feel like it took away from anything. I was like, it's fine. Walt was very
snacks.
He was the snacks. Thankfully, she had all the snacks Walt wanted, but Walt was very like needy that day, and it just wouldn't like take away from that conversation. That's a lot. Everything he said. Sometimes it adds to it.
Yeah, sometimes it adds to it.
It's fine.
Because it adds some lightness.
I have 3. What are they called when you combine nieces and nephews with a 4th on the way? There's some word for both anyway, but it's like nibblings or something weird.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm used, and I have tons of all my friends are moms. Pretty much.
And we love your kids too.
Yes,
so.
and they're always cute. Yes,
Very
very
good.
funny.
What you do is you just synthesize your thoughts into 15-second.
Spurts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it's over 15 seconds, forget it. It's over. That's about the span a kid can jump off of something, or Louis shoves something in his mouth, or
May literally like 2 days ago or something. I took her spot. We were gonna watch a TV show. My parents and my sister, and I took her spot and sat next to mom. and then she ran out of the room crying because she wanted to sit next to mom. And I was like, what? I was like, you're gonna cry about that? And then after, like, I can't even remember what happened. You said something, and then she was like, oh, okay. And then she was-
May's got little kid emotions and girl emotions.
Oh,
So
boy.
it's super fun. We can turn on a dime.
I will say kind of like in both of those things, like I've noticed that Braylon now notices like if I'm on my phone,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
distracted, and like I work from home 2 days a week, and John works from home 2 days a week, and so we're always on our laptops, like we have to be at work, you know. And she notices, and it really like makes her emotional when we're not engaged and like listening to what she is doing, like even if she's not trying to talk to us. And it causes her to like come over and constantly, because if I was just sitting there not doing anything on any electronic, she would not. She'd just be happy as well. But the fact that I have something in front of me, like she is constantly trying to get my attention. And it's just, I think it's that like, I want to be listened to. I want to be, you know, I want you to think I'm more important than what you're doing. And obviously they are. And I don't know, it's just a really good lesson in that whole listening thing. I'm just
Sure.
gosh, like even at that age, at 2 years old, she's like noticing that, you know, my attention is, you know,
That's good. Anything else? All right. This week I just want to introduce the concept and us to start working through the ideas. But as the weeks go on, we're going to start getting more specific with what it means to listen to each other, listen to our community, and even listen to yourself. Because that's the whole thing. You know, like within certain branches of evangelicalism, anything like listening to yourself is very not okay. You know, because your heart's deceitful above all else and all those things. We misquote and all that. We misinterpret Jeremiah passage and basically says you can't trust yourself. So there's a whole lot there. What's it mean to listen to God? I think we should explore that one day. Because a lot of things happen very damaging from someone saying this is from the Lord and I'm telling it to you. Do you listen to that? You know, it's like, should I listen to that? What about when the Lord gives you a message? What does that mean? Do we uphold the more reformed ideal of sola scripture? Like it's only in the scripture. So whatever the word says, that's what the Lord is speaking to me. All those things. I trust my experience. I trust tradition. I trust what the Spirit's speaking to me. All those things. I think we can keep exploring for the next foreseeable future. All I want to give you is the benefit, the nugget, the golden nugget that is the concept of listening. Because like, what would it take for a community? What would be the impact of a community that gave itself to thoughtfully, intentionally listening, especially in this season? Like, could the tide turn? Like, what's the answer to increased polarization? Could it be like a more thoughtful engagement with listening? Me and Cade had this conversation yesterday. We're walking through Jonesboro, and I think I was ranting about something political. And I think I said something skeptically, like, how did we end up here or something like that? Or how do we change? I forgot what I said. And his response, to brag on him, and he's not here, sadly, to brag on him, is, come here, dude. Come here. His response, to butcher it, it was basically just like, perhaps like if we actually did create a safe enough space for people to have dialogue, things could change. But the emphasis doesn't need to necessarily be on the changing. The emphasis needs to be on, let's create a safe space first and where dialogue can happen. And I think that goes across the board, across the spectrum. Like we've all had experiences where you're at Thanksgiving meal and grandma says something that's off the wall. Or you're the anxious teen that's saying something off the wall, you know, at Thanksgiving meal. And it's like that. Is that what we need to participate in? Is that the way forward? Is that how minds are changed? Is critical thinking like the enemy here? I'm just trying to give you everything. I think this is a whole bucket that I just keep pulling stuff out of. And all that to say is I'm excited about the next handful of weeks because I think this is a truly transformative thing we can give ourselves to. And if anything, it's like so deeply rooted in our tradition and traditions at large of what it means to be someone who can be present in the conversation. And it brings in stuff like humility, like the audacity to assume that I don't have everything figured out. It brings in like a conceptual understanding of truth. Like it's truth, everything, just the facts that's in my brain, and I have the facts, and then you need to have the facts. And so my conversation with you is just facts. All I'd say is it's beautiful, and I think the world could be transformed if we give ourselves to this path. And let's just forget it.
Well, just to give people time to find.
I did say it's this Thursday, so we can push it off to next Thursday if we want, the 17th.
Yeah, I'll make a soup or chili or something. So,
Cool.
things that are coming this weekend.
Yeah, we'll do that this next. We'll do something next Thursday, the 17th.
Okay.
That sound good?
Yeah, that's
Put a pin in it. Donation stuff. Is Leah still taking things or others?
I don't know if she taking these, and they're taking very specific things. Like there's an Amazon list, yeah. But I think honestly, one of the girls is asking them to stop the wish list right now. 'Cause it is so I don't know if she needs anything at this moment, but I know she's still getting shipments. Or did you say it's going to her
It's
parents' house?
switching to a different person's
Okay.
house
Hmm.
now, but then it's gonna switch back. So when it switches back to her house, I know she'll probably
Yeah.
get a lot of help. But if you like follow her on Instagram, they post like very specific things they're looking for. Like sometimes it's a very certain kind of formula or like a certain kind of medicine, things like that. They post about, which I think is probably.
And it's cool just to see, like, she has been really good about posting, like, exactly where everything's going, so that's been really cool.
She's been working her butt off.
She has, and she's 20 weeks pregnant, and
Yeah.
has a little kid, that's a lot, so. She can do.
Oh, is there anything you can do for her?
Good question.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, something maybe just to allow her to rest or something, even if we gave her and Kevin, like, to just go out and just give her a second to rest.
How can you do that?
We can use Mosaic's account. We have money in the account. Give them a gift card or something.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's do that. This is completely off topic, but I got that book of belonging in for the kids. Cade has it. I gave it to Cade and I said, try it. So he's trying something in there. So we'll see how it goes. Told him to read the whole thing, cover to cover. So our kids are gonna come back and be Bible scholars. So, but if you want to look at it, it's well worth it. I mean, it's gorgeous. The scholarship in it is actually incredible. Like what it says is incredible. It calls everybody by their like Jewish name. So it's beautiful. The art's amazing. So just check it out. But Kate's got it. So hopefully it's intact and all the kids are intact. All the kids are alive. Yeah. So, but we are starting that, which I am excited about. You know, starting to have a little bit something that's more helpful and something I feel very confident to get behind when it comes to reading our kids some kind of Bible stories and stuff like that. So, but that's existing. That's all I got. Next week we'll pick back up with listening part 2 or whatever I call it on the YouTube. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see what it's called. I think today was just. I don't even know if I gave today a title. So, all right, everybody good? All right, cheers.
We'll figure out a 3-letter alliteration. Put it on the
Please.
Oh, actually, Leah just texted and she said she has a ton of packages that need